Welcome back, everyone, to the Research Works podcast. It is Dana here. We are here at EACD Slovenia 2023, and it is now day 3, the final day of the conference, which is always a whole lot of fun because the conference dinner was last night, so I'm pretty amazed I even have a voice. But we have so much more to bring to you today as well. And today, I'm so excited to be able to introduce to you, I guess, Professor Nora Shields, because I feel like I've spoken to every other member of a team about this amazing program, and I actually get to meet her in person now. Welcome, Nora.
Thanks, Dana. Lovely to meet you.
It's lovely to meet you as well. So from LaTrobe University and now the Olga Tennison Autism Research Centre, you've come a long way to this conference too. It was a pretty long flight, wasn't it?
It was. Well, it's always a long flight to get to Europe, but then once you land, though.
Yeah, it's so nice to be here, and Slovenia has been this amazing place to have this conference. I've just been really enjoying that. So today, I guess I really just want to talk to you about your presentation, which actually represents a huge body of work. And I say huge, and I really do mean huge. But your presentation title was Effect of a Community-Based Intervention, FitSkills, for Young People with Disability on Physical Activity Participation. It's a step wedge cluster randomised trial. Now, I know that FitSkills has won many awards, and every time I speak with members of your team or I look at your papers, I'm just like, whoa, how did you do this and how did you come up with it? Let's start there, Nora.
Oh, well, let's if we go back to the beginning.
Yeah.
Everything always starts by asking a single question.
I love that. It's a dangerous question.
It's a dangerous question. And so the question I asked was, why do young adults with Down syndrome, why are they not physically active? And so I went and I didn't go. So I had an honours student at the time who went and spoke with young adults with Down syndrome and their families and their support people, and basically said, well, why aren't you active, and what would help support you being active?
Great.
And they told us so much rich stuff that but one of the key things that kept coming up and which I've learned is actually quite a universal concept is that the lack of social support was one of the key barriers. And they told us, well, if we need somebody to exercise with, if we've got somebody, then that really helps. And the reason that really struck a chord was because at the time I was coordinating the pediatric content of the physiotherapy program. Yes. And, we, ask all of our graduates at the end of the course, like when they're a year out, sort of what was good, what would you change, those kind of things. And they, consistently kind of over a number of years, when I was reviewing this data, I said, well, we want more opportunities to work with young people. So here I had one group of young people who were saying, we need somebody to exercise with, and another group of young people saying, well, we need to get experience working with young people. And so essentially the idea of FitSkills was born. And so the next step was sort of testing that idea out because, so the next question was, well, what would happen if I put a young person with Down syndrome into a gym with a physiotherapy student and nobody else there? Would that be okay? And it turns out, yes, that that seemed to work. And so then the next step was, well, can we do that on a sort of a larger scale?
Scale it up,
And then all the time that we were doing this, they then sort of evolved two sort of streams of work.
Yes.
One stream was very much around the young person with disability. What were the benefits? What happened to them? What did they think? What what did they get out of it? But also then for the student, sort of what did they get out of it? Did they get out of it? And of course, what we found and replicated numerous times now is that it's a win-win situation.
Amazing.
So the young people with disability get the support that they need to exercise at the gym. They love it because they're actually really apprehensive about going into that setting.
Yeah.
And we kind of know that people are apprehensive about going into a new setting, but I hadn't really, kind of understood just how sort of fearful they were about, will people stare at me? Will I know what to do with the gym equipment? Will I hurt myself if I exercise in the wrong way? They had all of these kind of,
Such
sort of
genuine questions and concerns in a new environment, aren't they? Yeah.
Absolutely, and they're legitimate as well, because like for years we've kind of been, sort of, I suppose, mollycoddling them in a way. Yep. And then for the, so the key thing for them then was to have somebody waiting there at the gym, which just reassured them that, kind of,
they're not alone.
I'm not here on my own. I've got somebody to meet and who's going to sort of be my exercise partner here, and also that was a sort of a driver as well, because we're all the same when it comes to like kind of am I going to put on my runners and I'm going to go out and it's a process. It's a process. And so, but if you have somebody waiting for you at the other end, you can't let that person down, and that's sort of what they told us, is that they continued to show up because they had somebody who was showing up for them. And then for the young the student mentors, it's incredible because the data are so remarkably consistent, and what they tell us sort of completely independently, because they're doing this one-to-one at different gyms, so they don't always know each other either. Sure. And so what they tell us is that they suddenly get disability in a way that they didn't get before. So about half of our student mentors have never met a person with disability.
Wow.
So, that's kind of quite remarkable for a group of young people who are in a health discipline at the university.
About to enter the industry.
Pretty much.
Wow.
And so the message that we get from them is that they suddenly appreciate that this young person is just like them, that they have the same wants, needs, desires, they have the same dreams and goals, and they want the same things out of life. And as, kind of funny as it sounds, but that really is a light bulb moment for them. And I think for creating a health workforce, that's incredibly important. 1 in 5 people have a disability. And so we really want our health workforce to actually get that.
Yeah, that's right. Because it's just it's the awareness, it's the, we call them the soft skills associated with that, being able to communicate, being able to plan. But I absolutely love how you've developed that, because it's so consumer-led on so many levels. It's not just the children and their families, but it's also looking at our health workforce for the future. It's constantly preparing us, and I think that's why this is such a program that has won awards. I can see why. It's amazing.
And it's interesting you say that, Dana, because one of the things, I mean, obviously we've listened at all. Like it actually has come from consumers. Lots of the ideas you ask the right questions, and actually people will tell you the answers. But the other part of it is that sort of after the initial research studies that we did, we did a large trial, and I remember the trial coordinator telling me at the time that she kept getting this feedback from the participants in the experimental group saying, we really loved that intervention. We really loved that. That worked so well. Brilliant. We want to do it again. Can we do it again?
Brilliant.
And she really, she kept saying, Nora, you need to do something about this. You can't let, you can't just ignore this, because, this sort of feedback was overwhelming, really, and was very consistent. And so that sort of led us to sort of ask the next question. The next question was as well, can it be established as a fee-for-service program, like nominally? So, using a sort of a not-for-profit model, and this was pre-NDIS.
Okay.
So, kind of would people sort of pay to do something like this? And the answer is yes.
Wow.
Yes, they would.
Wow.
And at that point, the other thing that, the research up to that point had involved young people with Down syndrome. But at that point, we said, well, we reckon this might work for other young people with disability.
Yeah.
Should we kind of open it up and see what happens? So we did.
You did, yeah.
And yes, so in the next kind of iteration, yes, we still had this group of young people with Down syndrome, but young people with cerebral palsy started coming into the mix, and then young people on the autism spectrum. So, we've kind of naturally, this whole sort of diverse group of young people who all identify as having a disability are drawn to the idea. And the thing that kind of gets them in, and they've told us this, the thing that kind of gets them over the line, because, for many of them, they've been told for years, you need to exercise, you need to be physically active. Right? And again, they've told us, sort of, my pediatrician has been telling me for years that I need to exercise. But the thing that gets them over the line is the mentor, is that social support, is having that person waiting for them at the gym, so that they're not doing it on their own, so that they have the support that they need, and that support can take many guises. It can simply be the presence of another person, but sometimes it's that they need that person to kind of keep them on task, or to keep them focused, or to show, to learn together how to use the equipment.
And also someone who's sort of similar age as well. It's not a parent, or many times, if say, it'll be expensive, but if you have a physiotherapist or an exercise physiologist go out with them every single time, there's still, that it's a different relationship, isn't it?
Absolutely, Dave. You've hit the nail on the head. Like, what adolescent wants to exercise with their parent?
Good point.
And yet, when you look at the literature, we expect young people with disability to do things with their families all the time. And that just doesn't reflect what every other teenager growing up wants to do. That's when people, gain their independence.
That's right.
They begin to develop their own identities independent of their families, and that's a normal part of growing up. And kind of it's exactly the same for people with disability. They're not any different.
And I feel like that's been such a theme through this conference. I've been speaking to so many people now saying that we always need to be thinking about the transition to adulthood. And that transition to adulthood starts with us as pediatric therapists right from the beginning to develop self-efficacy, developing platforms and the ability for them to make their own decisions over time. Because it doesn't happen at a click, go, okay, well, now you're done pediatrics and here we go to adults. And we don't do our children, our families a service when we do it that way. We really have to allow and facilitate that process. And I feel like you've already done that. That was, you've been thinking about that already, and we're sort of all coming alongside that. I'm really curious about that time lag. Like, when you first came up with the idea and you've evolved it over time, when did the idea first come about? Like, how long has this taken?
This is now well over a decade. If we start off, with the qualitative study, and then we did a pilot randomized controlled trial, then we did a large randomized controlled trial, then we did an initial feasibility study to see would it work in practice, and then the trial of the study that I spoke about at this conference was a large implementation trial that we actually secured the funding for in 2016. So kind of by the time you get all the staff on board, by the time you start recruiting participants and getting the trial running, like we just scraped in by the skin of our teeth with COVID. Our last data collection point was February 2020.
Wow.
So we had most people do an in-person final assessment, but of course, as always is the case with clinical trials, there are some stragglers, and so we had to collect the final sort of pieces of data, just remotely by questionnaire because that was,
that's what we had to do.
Just what everybody had to do. We were all adapting.
That's right. What would be your main take-homes for clinicians about your studies and what you found, particularly what you presented as well the other day? Like, what would be the main take-home that you really want people to grasp and walk away with?
Well, there's a couple of things. So I think that the main one is that FitSkills really is an exemplar. So I'm not presenting this as this is the only way to do it. There are many, many, many examples of how to do this, how to do it, and how to do it well. The thing I'm proudest of is the fact that FitSkills is evidence-based. It's rock solid. We've really done the work and built it up. So for me, it's for everybody to take that as an exemplar that yes, we can do this. It is possible, and it's one way to get young people active. There are going to be lots of other ways, and I think often, you know, and even there was a question yesterday in one of the sessions, you know, well, which is better, you know, cycling or, you know, swimming or whatever, you know, it's like it's not that one is better than the other. It's just we've got choice. And actually, that's one of the other things that young people with disability and their families told me in another study quite some time ago is that choice matters to them in the same way that choice matters to everybody else. And you know, often they don't have choice. They don't have a lot of choice. So having, you know, multiple options that will work in different contexts because FitSkills won't work in every context. But sort of, I suppose, using the key ideas and the key themes, I suppose, from FitSkills. And so that's the sort of second main thing is that the gold in FitSkills is really that social support. And there are lots and lots of ways of providing social support. We've looked at that in gym settings, but I mean, equally, you could be looking at how you use social support in other settings as well.
I guess that's the skills of the clinicians to be able to know the family and the context and the environment, what's available. And I think that's also been a bit of a theme through the conference too. It hasn't just been, you know, we do name our interventions to help identify what it is that we're doing, but the key is more so to understand the ingredients that have made it effective and to be able to draw on them and to implement them in the right context. And I feel like what you've spoken about with mentorship and, you know, social support, that is something that I feel like we could easily do in our practice, to think about that and facilitate that in the conversation.
And I think the final thing I would sort of say to clinicians is, you know, not to mollycoddle young people with disability, you know, to give things a go. I think we're still quite hesitant about giving things a go. And I understand that because we always come from that first principle of first do no harm. But the thing is that young people are incredibly resilient and they want to give things a go. And there is dignity in allowing young people the opportunity to experience risk as well. And, you know, we you know, many clinicians become very risk averse, and actually that doesn't do that really doesn't help facilitate. And so one of the other posters that, you know, we have at the conference is really about that. Is about the fact that you know, we've looked at, particularly for those young people with more complex disability. You know, I think we're still a little bit afraid of what might happen if we let them do things. We're still afraid that they would hurt themselves or that there would be an adverse reaction or an adverse event. And of course, we don't want any of those things to happen. But we, you know, we also need to think about the question of what would happen if they don't exercise? What's the risk of them not exercising? And then by asking that question, that then sort of leads us to really think about, okay, how can we do this? What do we need to do? What are the steps we can take to actually do this in a way that everybody benefits?
Nora, that's such a wonderful take home. I think that's something that we can all just take take that advice and implement it straight away. So absolutely incredible. I've loved this conversation with you. I do feel like I need another opportunity to talk to you on a whole big scale of all of your studies, but I think for all of the listeners right now, just to get a taste of where this came from and all the results to follow and just to be aware of it, I think is just absolutely fabulous. So thank you so much for your time today on the final day of conference, bright and early. Thank you for coming in so early.
Thanks, Dana.
Absolutely loved it. So thanks everyone for listening. I hope you're enjoying this conference series. Stay tuned for so much more. Talk to you soon. Bye.